no parent should ever have to send their kids to school and have them not return.
That fear is now a reality in South Florida. The 19-year-old right there on the right side of your screen, expelled student. He's now behind bars this morning after a school shooting spree leaves 17 people dead.
All right, the first victim now identified as a football coach who witnesses say shielded students and died a hero.
Indeed. Todd Pyro is live in Parkland, Florida with a breaking update on the investigation. Todd, what can you tell us?
That's right, Steve. Ainsley and Brian, good morning to you. 17 counts of premeditated murder. Those are the charges we just learned were brought against Nikolas Cruz. This following a long night of interrogation. We've also just learned that Cruz is scheduled to appear in court at 12:30 today. Meantime, like you said, Fox News has confirmed that the heroic football coach who reportedly jumped in front of bullets to save the lives of his students has died. Aaron Feis, an assistant football coach and security guard at the school, is the first fatality to be identified. Also this morning, the killer taken to county jail as we continue to learn brand new details about him. Overnight, authorities swarmed a mobile home park about 30 minutes away from here, sources saying it is in connection with the shooting. A neighbor in the area said police told him it was some kind of explosive at one of the homes. As for yesterday's nightmare, the pictures from inside the school just absolutely terrifying. Shaken and crying, students trying to find cover. The gunman setting off fire alarms and then shooting those fleeing with an AR-15. Reports of him wearing a gas mask and having smoke bombs on him during the bloodbath. Then trying to sneak out in the escaping crowd before being arrested in a nearby neighborhood.
I'm still scared. Like I just have that image, like that sound of the gunshots right in my head. Like I just hear it like constantly. It was the most scariest experience of my life.
And with each passing hour, a picture of 19-year-old Nikolas Cruz becomes clearer. His adoptive mother died this past November, and he was living with a friend's family. He was expelled from school for disciplinary reasons. One student said it was for fighting with his ex-girlfriend's new boyfriend, and that Cruz had been abusive to the girl. On social media, Cruz is seen with pictures of guns and knives, bragging about shooting animals. The Broward County Sheriff calling the posts very disturbing. And many people described him as obsessed with guns. Words like sketchy, weird, off, strange, troubled, and super stressed out all the time used by multiple students to describe the killer. One student even told local media that, quote, everyone predicted the shooting, with kids joking before yesterday that one day he would shoot up the school.
He was like shy, like with his lunch bag, but like he wouldn't talk a lot.
What was your take on it?
I mean, he was like that weird kid at school that you see, like walk around the school.
Described as a loner?
Yeah, like a loner.
The FBI is asking anyone with pictures or video from inside or outside the school to please get it to them immediately so that they can piece it together for the investigation. Also, just moments ago at 8 o'clock, a number of facilities opened up throughout Broward County so that parents and students could get grief counseling they most definitely need in the largest mass shooting at a school since Newtown. Back to you.
All right, Todd, thank you very much.
Thanks, Todd.
There are some real cold-blooded details that are coming out. It sounds like this guy went into the school, started shooting, and then pulled the fire alarm. He also apparently, according to Bill Nelson, and we've confirmed this, he had a gas mask on, and he also had smoke bombs as well. When he pulls the fire alarm, everybody who's locked down says, oh, got to go out in the hall. And there he was with the gun.
There were 17 people that were killed, and before the show started, we were getting word that only 12 had been identified, so 5 had not been identified. And you think, how can that happen? Parents were apparently going from hospital to hospital looking for their children if they hadn't heard from them yet, because in high school, I guess you don't have an ID. You might have a driver's license. You might not take it to school with you. I saw some video yesterday of the kids coming out. It was like the aerial views of kids coming out of the classroom, dropping their backpacks in a pile. So kids were going to the hospital without any ID. Some Some of them, if they had been shot, were in surgery. They weren't able to be identified. So, you know, imagine that feeling as a parent, not knowing where your child is.
And if you're law enforcement, you don't know. This is a 19-year-old
Right.
who blends in. You don't know if he has any accomplices. Just so you know how unlikely it is to happen at Broward County at Parkland, Florida. They say that the Northwest Broward City saw only 19 violent crimes per year. That's a crime rate of 0.6% per 1,000 residents. In 85% of the cities, out of all the cities in this country, it's safer than just about all of them. So this is an example of one of the safest cities in the country. Now, Governor Rick Scott was just with us, and as happy as he is with the crime rate in Broward, for the fact that it happened there makes him feel like something has to change.
They're like me, they're mad. I mean, how can this be going on in our society? We know that something has to change here. We cannot continue to have this violence. You just can't imagine how a person can senselessly go shoot and kill another human being, probably somebody that they knew. How can anybody do something like this? I'm furious that this could happen anywhere. We're going to figure this out. We're going to keep our kids safe. I want parents to wake up every day and say, my child is going to go to a safe school.
Yeah, I think one thing that's going to be coming up, everyone's going to, of course, parlay this and pivot to gun control, and that'll be a circuitous debate again. But one thing I think that you could do right away is allow the security guards, let alone the teachers, to have guns. Most of them are licensed. They have to leave their guns at home to come to work, which is insane. So now you have these security people, no matter how skilled, have to use hand-to-hand combat with a guy with an AR-15. You're going to lose that.
Well, I think the governor was right when he was talking about speaking to the family members last night, and everybody's angry because they want answers. Because what we're learning this morning is this guy had a very disturbing social media profile that should have set off some red flags. And apparently, as well, it was known that he had been in treatment at a mental health clinic up until about a year ago, and then he just stopped going, which Senator Marco Rubio told us about a half an hour ago. Some dots needed to be connected, and we need to do a better job connecting them going forward.
You have to look at the totality. It's not just a guy that you're getting some calls about doing weird things. It's a guy that's putting all these things up on social media. It's a guy that's had problems and threatening people in school. And so when you put the full picture together, you start to say, this is a person who could be a very serious problem. And then what can you do about it? How can you get ahead of it? How can you jump on that and prevent it from happening? And that's the problem here, is that we look at these things in an isolated way, but not in their totality.
Well, if you look at this kid's Instagram, which has since been taken down, thank goodness, and we've decided not to share with you the photos because they're so graphic, but there's one when he's holding up 3 knives, and he says, mother effing knives. He writes that at the bottom. Then there's a picture of his face being covered with a gun, and he says, pistol, fun is blank. I mean, his language in and of itself is terrible, but I guess that's how kids talk this day and age. But they don't post pictures like this. One of the students said that he was posting a picture of animals that he killed gruesomely, killing things like lizards and frogs, and posting the pictures. And you know, back in the day, we always heard if a kid can do that to an animal, that doesn't usually end up meaning the kid normally is going to do something else major or violently down the road.
But okay, so a lot of people probably knew that his social media feed was disturbing like that. So you tell somebody, and they're going to go, well, it's just knives, it's just words. Attorney General Pam Bondi of Florida says, look, threats are threats. Tell somebody.
When they're posting it on social media, they have followers. So kids who are out there, parents, you've got to monitor this stuff. And if you see it, take everything seriously. Take every threat seriously and report it to law enforcement. We would rather you do that and be wrong 99% of the time than have anything happen in this world. And these teens now are vocal on social media. They don't just pop up from anywhere. There are warning signs.
And these AR-15s in particular are becoming more and more common. A lot of them used for sport shooting, for hunting, obviously for self-defense. They're labeled as essentially a civilian version of the M16.
So what needs to change? Maybe if you have these crazy images on Instagram, if there are warning signs, if you're expelled from school, or if you're not allowed to take a backpack to school, if you're 19 years old, should you be able to have one of these high-powered rifles?
Well, he was able to buy it legally, we are told. However, it's unclear whether or not you know, apparently you don't have to disclose your mental health status, and we don't know the nature of his treatment at the facility, but nonetheless, the President of the United States has been taking it all in and briefed by law enforcement, and he tweeted this morning, so many signs that the Florida shooter was mentally disturbed, even expelled from school for bad and erratic behavior. Neighbors and classmates knew he was a big problem. Must always report such instances to authorities again and again. So he is echoing Pam Bondi.
Yeah, I have a hunch, because we've seen this before. We're going to find out what role law enforcement played and how many knew this guy's potential danger, because there's some reports that not only did students gossip about it in school, but maybe authorities did know about it.
Well, the police had been to his house a number of times, apparently, through the years. But also, keep in mind, he had a terrible family dynamic. He was adopted at birth after his birth mother died. The couple that adopted him, considerably older. The father died when he was very young, and then his mother, the woman who raised him, just died 3.5 months ago. And people said, well, you know, he was depressed, but then again, his mom just died.
Yeah, but a lot of people have parents deceased and they're depressed, but they're not going to go and do this. Just not sure if you're 19 years old and you're expelled from a public school that big. You know, we were talking about it earlier in the show, and some of my friends that have gone to private schools, they're like, you know, they'll expel you for, you know, one demerit. But in a public school like this, it's a large school. I went to a school like this. In order to get expelled from a school like this, you've done a lot of things wrong. You have a long rap sheet of disciplinary problems.
And he was told you could come back on campus, but just don't come back with a backpack. And
that was before
last
he was
year.
Expelled, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then just don't ever come. And he returned yesterday.
And being that he knew a lot of kids in that school, and there was reports that he felt as though he was bullied, you wonder if he was actually targeting people specifically. Meanwhile, some students don't care. They were traumatized by it. They would come out and they had spoken earlier about what it was like, not only knowing that they could be shot at any moment, but hearing that sound that you usually hear if you're in Iraq or Afghanistan.
Yeah.
And it sounds like a war zone.
We opened this hour with that 10 seconds of Snapchat, which is so scary. It is so loud.
So
but also,
loud.
you look at it, you say, if I was in that room, where would I go?
What would you do?
No place to run. Terrible. All right.
All right.
It's 12 minutes now after 8 o'clock. We will continue our coverage, and I think we've got a special guest coming up.
Senator Bill Nelson is coming up next. We have not spoken to him in a while, but of course he's got the military background and astronaut background. He actually knows this area quite well. Senator Bill Nelson, right after this. This morning, investigators frantically searching for answers as Florida reels from one of the worst school shootings attacks in recent history.
Joining us right now with an update, Democratic Florida Senator Bill Nelson. Senator, good morning to you. I know that you had gotten a briefing from the FBI early yesterday, and you were able to tell America some of the details. What's the latest?
The fact that this fella apparently was really premeditated. He had a gas mask. He had smoke bombs, and he hit the fire alarm so that kids would start coming out and into the hallway.
Yeah.
How would you gauge the response time from law enforcement from when they were alerted this is not and when they acted and what they did? Because we did hear he was hurt and brought to the hospital. How did he get hurt? Did we hit him at all?
I don't know the answer to that. But I do know that law enforcement was there very quickly.
Senator, I know you were born in Miami and then you moved to Central Florida. Fort Lauderdale is between that area, which is where the shooting took place, right outside of Fort Lauderdale. Do you know anyone who lives there? Have you talked to anyone who has kids at that school or is connected to it?
Sure. I talked to the superintendent of the schools, and I know him. He is really shaken by this. And he's bound and determined that the community and the school family will heal, and he'll bring them all back together.
Right. Senator, do you also think it's time to give the schools a fighting chance when these crazy former students come back to kill? And don't you think it's time to arm qualified security guards?
Yes, and this is a mental health problem.
Right.
And we've got to face the fact that this is an automatic military assault weapon. I want you to know, I grew up on a ranch. I have grown up with guns. I have hunted all my life. I hunt with my son still. And an AR-15 is not for hunting, it's for killing. And the question is, should this be a legal weapon in our society? Just think, all of these children are our children. And if we were the parents of one of those children, if we thought that it was not easy to get an assault weapon, we might be thinking that one less child was dead.
Sure. It sounds like you are suggesting another gun law to ban those kind of weapons.
Well, you know, we had that back in the 90s, and it expired after 10 years in the early 2000s. And we can't even get, Senator Feinstein offered an amendment. Now, get this. It was if you're on the terrorist watch list, you cannot buy a gun. We couldn't get the votes to pass that.
And I believe, if I remember correctly, those couple of years without assault weapons bans did not affect anything in terms of crime and killing.
Are you talking about during that 10-year period?
Yeah.
I don't know the statistics from that, but I know that an automatic weapon such as this can kill a lot of people in a short period of time. It can kill a whole lot of things in a short period of time.
Well, that certainly will be part of the conversation going forward.
It should be.
Along with the mental health issue, which you touched on, and the disturbing social media. There do appear to have been a number of warning signs that simply were missed.
And
Senator, thank you very much.
Arming security guards in these schools.
Yeah, you ask about that. The fact is, we can't make our schools arm camps. I mean, that's just that's not practical, and it's not reflective of our open society.
I just want a qualified guy be able to shoot back. But, Senator, we're out of time. Thanks so much. I appreciate it.
Coming up, the Florida high school shooter due in court later today. So where does the investigation go from here? Criminal defense attorney and former detective Ted Williams gives us some insight on that. That's next. We are back with a Fox News alert. New video out this morning of Broward County, Florida, where the suspected gunman behind a horrifying school shooting is now, as you can see, walking there. He's behind bars. He's walking to jail in that picture. He's wearing his hospital gown still.
The 19-year-old former student now facing 17 counts of premeditated murder. Rebecca Vargas from our affiliate in South Florida is live outside the jail in Fort Lauderdale. Rebecca?
Yeah, good morning. He was officially booked here, the shooting suspect, 19-year-old Nicholas Cruz, just about 3 hours ago, formally charged, as you said, with 17 counts of premeditated murder. Our cameras there this morning as he was brought here to the jail, still wearing that hospital gown. As you can remember, when he was taken into custody yesterday, they did take him to the hospital but to be checked out. We don't know if he suffered any injuries, but he was there only a short amount of time, about 45 minutes. Then he was brought to Broward County Sheriff's Office headquarters. That's where he was interrogated overnight. We're talking about 12 hours of interrogation from FBI, homicide detectives with the Broward Sheriff's Office as well. They're searching for a motive here. What led to this tragedy? They're looking at what he did in the days and the hours that led to this shooting tragedy. And what we have heard from the sheriff is they're not just looking at that. They're also looking at social media, at his Instagram posts, at his Facebook posts, which have since been deleted. But what they did show was nothing short of disturbing. That's according to the Broward Sheriff's Office. Now he is sitting behind bars as we speak here in Fort Lauderdale. The next step is to go to bond court. So that is what we will be following. We'll bring you those updates as they come. For now, live in Fort Lauderdale, I'm Rebecca Vargas for Fox and Friends.
All right, Rebecca, thank you very much for all the reports this morning. Meanwhile, here to weigh in on where the investigation goes from here is Fox News contributor and former homicide detective Ted Williams joins us from our nation's capital. Ted, you know, Rebecca just pointed out that they're trying to figure out what the guy's motive was. In one of these mass murders like this, Whatever possesses somebody to do something so diabolical?
You know, that's the $64,000 question, Steve. Because you're trying to get into the mind of a killer, and that's clearly not easy. But I can tell you there were so many warning signs that, unfortunately, it appears were missed here. His social media site, where he had all of this warped information going back and forth, or the fact that he would kill small animals. Yeah. You've got to wonder, how did this guy get a gun? And also, he was in a mental institution or whatever being treated, and he stopped going. And you would have thought somebody somewhere would have to notify the authorities of what was going on in this guy's head.
That's right.
What will investigators be asking him, and what are they looking for, Ted?
Well, they've got to be very careful here. As a lawyer, I can tell you they're interrogating him to try to find out what was his motive. But once he lawyers up, he's no longer going to be able to talk to them. So what they're also trying to do is to listen to what he's saying, even when they're not interrogating him, because they're trying to determine a motive in this case.
Sure. And regarding the gun he reportedly used, the AR-15, we had Senator Bill Nelson with us just about 5 minutes ago. He referred to it as an automatic weapon. It is not an automatic weapon, but it is a powerful weapon. But, Ted, would it be fair to say if he didn't use a gun like that, he would have used another kind of gun if he was so motivated to try to kill people yesterday?
Absolutely, it's fair to say that, Steve. I think that what he had was actually a semi-automatic weapon. But, Steve, I have covered San Bernardino. I have covered the shooting at Virginia Tech. I've covered the Las Vegas shooting with the 59, and we're talking about an automatic weapon. I'm not for banning automatic weapons, but I am for banning automatic weapons and the dangerous concoction between them and mental illness. We have got to be able to put people on some kind of a mental illness registry that when they go and attempt to buy one of these automatic or semi-automatic weapons, that they will show up from a mental illness standpoint.
You said you're for banning automatic weapons. Aren't automatic weapons already banned? Isn't this a semi-automatic?
Automatic weapons are, Ainsley, you're absolutely
They're all
right.
banned.
It's the semi-automatic one. And again, I want to make sure I'm clear. I'm not interested in banning all of them for all purposes. I'm interested in them being banned as it pertains to individuals who have shown some mental discord and mental illness.
Exactly. The big question is, where do you draw the line? We had Tammy Bruce on, who said that 70% of the country is on some sort of drug right now that can impact your awareness.
Yeah, and Ted, this guy, he was 19 years old. Should they be a little older if they're going to buy this gun?
Well, you know, those are debates that we should have. I do believe that they should be. But, guys, we go through this several times a year, the same identical conversation. We need to now start doing something about it.
Something just is not working out. Ted, thank you very much for joining us from our
Ted.
nation's capital.
My pleasure.
Stories change. You report on stories differently when you're a parent yourself. You start thinking
100%.
about life differently. And when I think about my little girl and what she's going to go through over the next few decades.
I know it.
The arguments change for me. All right, in the wake of the tragedy in Florida, some Democrats, like Senator Bill Nelson, you just heard from a few moments ago, he says he thinks we need new gun laws. What do you think?
Well, we're going to ask Texas Senator Ted Cruz. He's coming up.
He sprinted with everything he had towards it to make sure everybody was safe, and I heard that he got in front of a couple people and shielded them, and he actually took the bullets for them. And he, I guess now didn't make it, but he saved their life for sure.
We are back with a Fox News alert. A student there you hear describing the heroic actions of that football coach right there, who has now been identified as the first victim of the horrific school shooting in Florida. His name is Coach Aaron Faze.
dying a hero after shielding some of the students from gunfire. The heartbreak felt throughout the country as we learn more about the panic and horror on campus.
Caroline Shively is live down in Parkland, Florida with the latest for us. Caroline?
Hi there, Stephen and Ainsley. By my count, I've covered 7 of the last 8 mass shootings in America. Sandy Hook is the only one I haven't covered. What I am struck by in all of these is the massive scope of how this affects the local officials. Here's one who spoke with us.
I'm absolutely sick to my stomach to see children who go to school armed with backpacks and pencils lose their lives. My triplets graduated from this very school where we had a deputy sheriff whose son was shot tonight, shot in the arm. He's at one of the local area hospitals.
School is closed today and tomorrow. Grief counselors are talking to students and staffers who need it. Stephen Ainsley, back to you.
All right, Caroline Shively live in Parkland, Florida. Thank you very much. Let's then bring in Texas Senator Ted Cruz, who joins us from Statuary Hall this morning. Senator, actually, I think you're in our bureau.
I am.
Senator, your thoughts about what happened yesterday in Florida?
Oh, it's truly heartbreaking, and all of us, our prayers are with the families and all of those children who went through that horror. You know, just a few months ago, I was in Sutherland Springs, Texas, with another horrific shooting in that beautiful church, and I've grieved with the families that are mourning their loved ones. And all of us together. This horror shouldn't exist, and we don't know right now exactly why this deranged individual did this. I'm sure in the days to come we're going to find out more about what his motives were, but whatever they were evil, and this is a horrible, horrible thing, and our prayers are very much with those Florida families.
Could something like that happen in Texas? Do they have armed guards in public schools in Texas?
Sure, this could happen anywhere. I mean, we have seen that evil can occur, whether in Parkland or in a church in Central Texas or in schools across the country. I mean, there are murderers. Evil is sadly always present, and we need to do what we can to act to prevent it. Sometimes you see brave heroes who are able to step forward, and sometimes you have people like in Sutherland Springs who are armed, who can engage the killer and stop them and save people's lives.
Well, that's what I was saying. Do your public schools allow it? Because I know every state is different. Do your public schools allow armed security?
Oh, sure. There are certainly some schools that have armed security, and that can make a difference, but it varies school by school.
Senator, I know the Democrats are calling now for more gun control. They're talking about not allowing you to buy the AR-15 anymore. How do you think Republicans will respond to this? Because we have seen multiple shootings recently, mass shootings using this weapon. You're a parent. You have young girls who are going to grow up and go to school as well, or are already in school. So how do you think Republicans need to respond?
Well, look, of course you're right that the reaction of Democrats to any tragedy is to try to politicize it. So they immediately start calling that we've got to take away the Second Amendment rights of law-abiding citizens. That's not the right answer. I can tell you in Sutherland Springs, I was there the day after the shooting, and I was in that sanctuary that was covered with bullet holes and blood, and was the most horrific thing I've ever seen in my life. And when I was at the hospital with the victims' families, over and over again what they said to me in Texas, they said gun control is not the answer here. This is moms grieving while their sons are being operated on. They said, look, we all had our guns. This was one of the moms that I talked to in Sutherland Springs. We all had our guns. We just left them in the car out of respect for the church. If any one of us had brought it in, that gunman never would have killed any of these people. And so the answer is to focus on criminals, to focus on violent criminals. This individual appears to have significant issues with mental illness. I think we will certainly be asking, were there signs of mental illness? Could we have stepped in and prevented this beforehand? With Sutherland Springs, had the Obama administration simply followed federal law and enforced the law, existing gun laws made it illegal for the Sutherland Springs shooter to buy a gun, but the Obama administration failed to report his criminal conviction, so it wasn't in the background check system.
Right. That was a military thing. Also, let's talk about something else you're going to be doing legislatively that's going to impact this country, and that is immigration. We understand there's 2 main plans you're going to be voting on today, the Rounds plan and the Grassley plan. What would Ted Cruz accept?
Listen, the plans that are before the Senate right now, I think they don't make any sense at all. We should not be granting citizenship to people here illegally. For whatever reason, you've got a whole lot of Republicans eager and to propose granting citizenship for 1.8 million people here illegally.
Oh, so you don't even like the president's 4 pillars?
Listen, that is dramatically to the left of where Barack Obama was. Barack Obama in DACA, which was executive amnesty, it was illegal, it was unconstitutional. DACA covered 690,000 people. Why on earth are Republicans trying to more than double, nearly triple that from 690,000 to 1.8 million?
But it's a more accurate number.
You know, tell that to the steel workers, tell that to the truck drivers, tell that to the American people we promised we wouldn't do amnesty.
Or to the people that are on the list.
And secondly, DACA, under Obama, did not provide citizenship. For the life of me, I do not understand. DACA was just a work permit. There was no citizenship whatsoever. Why would Republicans be galloping to the left of Barack Obama?
Because they want border security and they got to give to get something up, and you only have 51 votes?
Mark my words. If Republican majorities in Congress pass citizenship for millions of people in amnesty, I think it is quite likely we will lose both houses of Congress, and Speaker Nancy Pelosi will impeach President Trump.
Senator Cruz, do you not think it's accurate? Do you not think it's accurate that 70% of the country want a pathway?
No, I don't think it's accurate. And those polls are done. Those polls are deceptive. I can tell you the American people don't want amnesty. We want the border secured. You know what we ought to be doing? Right. We ought to be passing things like Cates Law, which I introduced. Cates Law says that violent felons who repeatedly enter the country illegally should face a mandatory minimum prison sentence. That's common sense legislation. Overwhelming majority of Americans agree with that. If we had passed Cates Law, that beautiful young woman, Kate Steinle, would not have been murdered on the pier in California by a repeat violent criminal who'd been in and out of prison, deported repeatedly. It is a profound mistake for Republicans to be granting amnesty and a path to citizenship for millions of people here illegally, and it's not being faithful to the promises we made to the voters.
All right, so Senator, you say that if Republicans do pass this, what you regard as amnesty, they'll be punished at the polls in November. What about looking across the aisle? What's the political motivation for the Democrats?
Look, the Democrats, their base, the extreme left, they're angry. They hate the president with a passion. I will tell you, it's not clear anything's going to pass the Senate. Ironically enough, Republicans may be saved from our foolishness because Democrats are so radical and extreme, they'll say no to everything. That's possible. But on the left, they are filled with fury, which means 2018 is going to be a turnout election. The left is going to show up in massive numbers. The only question that we need to ask if we want to know, is 2018 going to be a good election? Do Republicans pick up 4, 5, 6 Senate seats? Or is it a disaster election where we lose both houses? Is turnout. Do conservatives show up? And I got to say, if you wanted to design in a laboratory legislation to keep millions of conservatives at home, it would be what's being proposed right now. Let's go to the left of Obama and give a couple million people citizenship who are here illegally. I think that's a real mistake.
In exchange for a wall, which a lot of people want.
But you know what? We saw this deal in the 80s. The wall won't happen. The border security is like a promise of paying you Tuesday for a hamburger today.
If they put the money in a trust fund, it will happen. If they don't, they won't.
But that's not what the legislation does. It does it over 10 years. The Democrats understand this game. They know they can promise border security, and it doesn't happen. And you know what? The American people are tired of that bait and switch.
All right, Senator, thanks.
Thanks, Senator. Coming up next, we turn our attention back to our top story, the school shooting in Parkland, Florida. We don't even know why the shooter did it, but some are already saying gun control could have stopped him. Is that really true? What do you think? Our panel's going to debate that coming up next.